What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the collaborative mixtape between Birdman and Rick Ross. Basically, this album was called The H, and it was supposed to come out in 2008. But due to label politics, it kind of got scrapped for a few years, but they held on to the project until the spring of 2013, and then they dropped it as a free mixtape, which is pretty awesome because this is quite the quality project. I think this probably would have been a hit project throughout the summer of 2008 when it was supposed to come out. But yeah, Rick Ross, this was his follow-up project originally to Trilla from like the spring of 2008, and this was also this was also Birdman's 2008 album because he kind of took a decent break between Five Star Stunna and Priceless in late 2009. So that was kind of the concept. It was supposed to be like a nice touch here. I definitely would have preferred this type of album to have come out, but I'm glad that it came out as a mixtape. It's just an overall quality hit. It originally had a single that came out with it. I remember when this album was being talked about, like in the spring and summer of 2008, and the single that was supposed to come out for it was Sun Come Up, and I'm still going to treat it as a single, but Sun Come Up came out in the spring of 2008, and it was supposed to have Glasses Malone on there. I don't know what happened to that version of the song of that, but it was supposed to have Glasses Malone, but it also had T-Pain. The mixtape, the version of it that I downloaded doesn't list T-Pain on the hook, but that was a T-Pain hit. That was back when he was doing hooks all the time in 2008 and 2007 and stuff. So this is basically like a taste of Rick Ross from his Trilla days. This is before, not quite Rick Ross on his deeper than rap kind of vibes from early 2009, and it's not quite Birdman on his Priceless vibes from late 2009. This is kind of a lot. It's interesting that this just kind of has more of like a mixtape kind of feel. It definitely has similarities to like the Carter 2, and not, I mean, in some ways it kind of has similarities to Birdman's Like Father Like Son with Lil Wayne, but I definitely feel like this is kind of an approachable kind of mixtape oriented type project, and it just is interesting that it would have continued that kind of trend of some of those type ones. When you think of like the Birdman and Lil Wayne mixtape, like Father Like Son, the Carter 2, that project, and then you think of the Like Father Like Son album from 2006, and then Rick Ross's Trilla and Rick Ross's Port of Miami. It just has very much DJ Khaled host this mixtape. I don't know if he was gonna help out with the album if it had come out in 2008, but it really has like that kind of Miami mixtape type, Florida type feel of Rick Ross's Trilla and Port of Miami. There's some of those type vibes. Hustlin', if you like songs like Hustlin' and Push It to the Limit and The Boss by Rick Ross and This Me by Rick Ross and Here I Am by Rick Ross and some of those type gems, and you like 100 million by Birdman and Pop Bottles by Birdman and some of that type of stuff. It just is very much an era of that particular style that this is very quality and has a lot of hit potential on here. Definitely missed those vibes from both these artists. Lil Wayne is nowhere to be found on this project, but there are some other folks. It was interesting to kind of get Gutta Gutta on here, despite the fact that I didn't like the song that he was on. Gutta Gutta's on here. Mac Main is on here. No Lil Wayne. Kevin Rudolph's on here. It's just very much like a Cash Money kind of affair. It's too bad that like Triple C's and some of those type cats are on here, but this mixtape is hosted by DJ Khaled, so there is some extra stuff. It just really has very much like a Miami type feel. Very much Rick Ross on his hustling days and Birdman kind of on his 100 million days, just with that kind of Miami oriented Five Star Stunna type tones. That's kind of the thing, because I do feel like Five Star Stunna by Birdman was definitely a Miami fled version of like what he was doing on his albums. It's just definitely the most DJ Khaled and Rick Ross oriented of Birdman's projects. That's pretty good. It's just interesting kind of get it. I mean, there's not a ton of information about this project just because Wikipedia at least recognizes the fact that this project came out, but it doesn't really have an article. I want to say it used to back in 2013, 2014 or so, and originally like so many folks thought this was supposed to be an album that was going to come out by both these guys in 2008, but just the politics kind of sabotaged it. But it is virtually a pretty hit and quality record, and I would have to say it's definitely worth downloading as far as that kind of goes. I think this would have been a pretty valiant purchase had it come out. I don't know. I mean, really, the 2013 version of this project says that this was called Volume 1, which meant that there was probably supposed to be a Volume 2, and we would have been able to see some more songs that they had written and done around that time. time. So it's just really, I question like some of the other songs that were initially made during those sessions from 2008 as far as what could have happened. We never did get volume 2, so if you're thinking, oh, there's a volume 2 of the H, there never was one that came out. But I think they did do at least 10 songs. There is one song on here. There's 11 songs on the mixtape, but there's one song called Homie and Hose that's just kind of an interlude of Rick Ross just flirting with some chick on the song. But apart from that, you do get at least 10 songs. I estimate that there probably was a good chunk of other songs, and I bet that it probably would have been a pretty good festivity to have seen some of those in volume 2 of the H and that type of stuff. I treat this project basically as if this was the H album from 2008. And I think that's just a good concept. Just it may not have like all the bells and whistles of like a standard album that if that album would have come out would have had, but it definitely has some quality mixtape fare on here that just has a lot of gems. It just doesn't have like the radio polish and just the bells and whistles of that sort of concept, but it is good. It's definitely going to get a rave score. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the single. Like I said, there's not really much information about the single, but if you look hard enough, you can realize that Sun Come Up was supposed to be the single off of the H album that just didn't surface. So the Sun Come Up is the first single, and this is one that was supposed to have Glasses Malone on there and had T-Pain on the hook. This one is just kind of, Sun Come Up is the first single, and this is like mellow resort-like music, just a lazy kind of hustle day. Great T-Pain hook, and it's just some summer heat. Definitely reminds me of something when you're at a resort or just a vacation spot, something in like the Florida, Hawaii type vibes, California even, someplace where there'd be beaches and that type of stuff, just lot of sparkly water and just things like that, boats, yachts, those sorts of things as far as that kind of goes. This really has some interesting kind of fanfares, just kind of being like real relaxed, kind of lackadaisical kind of music. I mean, I feel like this is a kind of hustle song. The H, if you're wondering what the H stands for, when they call this project the H, it stands for the hustle. So H stands for hustle, and it's just kind of a lot of these songs have to do with money getting and just overall being on the grind. But this one is kind of more of a relaxed where you kind of have the money that you were hustling for. It's just kind of a more recreational tune as far as kind of being taken aback and just having like a mojito in your hand, something like that, just kind of relaxing, watching the sunsets and the pink skies and some of that type of stuff. Just really kind of resort-like music. I just really like the pace of it. It's a different kind of taste for Rick Ross. He didn't really do too many songs like this on Deeper Than Rap, so this is kind of a vibe and an extra valve from Rick Ross that just was kind of interesting. This is kind of out of Birdman's context too. It's just kind of interesting that sort of concept was just such a kind of relaxed, kind of mellow, kind of sunset sprawling kind of tune as far as that kind of goes. Just interesting. It definitely feels like a Miami song, but it's just a more relaxed and mellow kind of song compared to the stuff that both the artists kind of did. It's just, I really like the feel of it. Very comfortable kind of song. But that's about all the promotion on the project. So to talk about the other songs I recommend, well, out of 11 songs, there's 8 songs I recommend. But really slashing Homie and Hose, which I said was just an interlude, there's 10 songs. So 8 songs out of 10. Those 8 songs would be Sun Come Up, Why, Pop That Pussy, Money to Make, Got a Bitch, Don't Hustle Again, Betty Stout, and Addicted. So a really easy highlight on here is Betty Stout. This is definitely like a mixtape type cut. Definitely feels like some Don Cannon type beat. Has some fare very similar to like the Carter 2. This definitely feels like a gem off the Carter 2 with just that kind of soulful and just kind of chipmunk soul, just kind of a lot more musing and kind of thought-provoking blunt session type stuff where you just smoke a blunt to and that type stuff. Definitely feels very similar to stuff off the Carter 2 and like Dedication to and some of those mixtape type feels. This really feels like Lil Wayne should have been on this song or something like that, but Rick Ross and Birdman do a good job of this. Just an easy kind of mixtape cut. Another hit, there's not a ton of like really flashy stepping out type songs. I mean, there's definitely a lot of hustle songs and mixtape songs, but this is one. Addicted is definitely one that I liked on here. I just like the bravado of this song. It's definitely a very triumphant sounding song. Seems like a Two Pistols song. I remember Two Pistols. Some folks may not know who Two Pistols is, but he had a hit album in 2008, and I remember that. And I want to say I heard a song from 2008 that I swear sounds like a Two Pistols song. This beat on Addicted sounds very similar to like, it's been a long time since I heard the Two Pistols song, but I want to say if I had to guess, it seemed like a Two Pistols song from 2008 or so. It's definitely a flex and kind of stunting type song, definitely a flex and stunting type bruiser of a song, and it is a great stepping out jam. I just feel like this is a very powerful kind of glittery and sparkling kind of beat that's also very pounding and just has a lot of bravado and just kind of pull up kind of vibes and flex kind of vibes about it. It's just an overall good one. Don't Hustle Again's another nice one. If you like the song Maybach Music off of Rick Ross's Trilla album with Jay-Z on there, this has a lot of similar vibes to that type song. It's just a very suave hustle track, but it also feels like a promo type cut. I mean, it's a hustle song, but it's not quite as gritty and amongst like the hustling of just being on the grind and the seediness of that type stuff as far as it goes. It just has a lot more elegance. Feels like a song that Jay-Z would do. It just really feels like a pretty good promo track. Just a shopping, kind of dress to impress type song, just for folks who are kind of more in their mid and late 30s and stuff. Just not quite in tall tees and basketball shorts and that type of stuff, but just some of that context of just being a pretty suave promo song. God a Bitch is a really nice tune. This is just like a twinkling kind of ladies cut. This has a real sparkling and twinkling kind of beat on here. It's just a real nice vivid one. It's a ladies kind of swag song. I definitely see this one as them talking about the ladies that they have and that type of stuff. This really feels like a song for the ladies, for them to step out and kind of have some stunting type feel. I mean, there's not too many swag songs that seem oriented towards women, but this is definitely one that kind of does. This feels like a nice stunt track at that. It's just kind of a flashier song. I do like the concept of this song. Just an overall good one. Money to Make. Money to Make is another highlight off this project. It's very similar to Sun Come Up. This is a song that's a lazy, warm day kind of tune. It's a sun basking kind of song, and it's a low-key on the grind type cut, but it's also a song about living it up. Where I feel like Sun Come Up is definitely a song for relaxing. Sun Come Up is kind of a song for relaxing and being in beach chairs and appreciating like the pink skies and that type of stuff. I feel like Money to Make is a similar song to that in that kind of pitch, but this has a little bit more kind of hustle mentality, a little bit edgier song, a little bit more bustle towards it as far as that kind of goes. But they're both kind of a good 1-2 punch for just kind of more communion as far as just kind of being in like a typical relaxed, relatively relaxed kind of mood as far as that goes. I kind of feel like Money to Make is kind of one where you're just kind of in your whip with like the seats leaned back a bit with your sunglasses on, just kind of appreciating like the simmering sun and that type of stuff, just pink skies, and just more of like a relaxed kind of June day where you do maybe have some stuff still left over to do, but for the most part it's just kind of under tabs as far as being taken care of. It's just kind of some good songs. It's interesting, the kind of comfortability of this project. I really think that this concept was I think this concept as an album needed to happen, just because these were some good songs that just showed a different angle from Rick Ross and Birdman, where they did kind of, I mean, despite the fact that this album has a lot of hustle mentalities and bustle about it, a lot of these songs are not full blown amidst like the hustling, like Rick Ross's Hustling or Birdman's 100 Million or songs like that. Some of these just kind of have like different assets or facets of the hustle as far as just like the different variations of types of it. It's just good to kind of get a whole album that kind of has like a various degree of just the conduct of certain money aspects and that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. It's good, but there, as a result, there's not an overabundance of club songs like I'm going to talk about, like Pop That Pussy. Speaking of good club cuts on here, Pop That Pussy is a really nice one. This is definitely an easy kind of ringtone rap kind of song. It's definitely a good dance bop, and it's like a nice mini club jam. It's one of the few songs on here that kind of has this kind of astute kind of feel about it. It's a strip club tune. I definitely like the concept behind it. Easy kind of song for some chicks to kind of twerk to and get rowdy to and that type of stuff. Definite freak tune as far as that kind of goes. I do think that there needed to be a more even balance. Like, this is why I kind of wanted like Rick Ross and Birdman's The H Volume 2, because I think if there had been more songs like this, it would have evened it out a little bit more. But apart from Pop That Pussy and to some degrees like God a Bitch, it doesn't quite have that sheer kind of, it doesn't have that Friday night strip club kind of hustle that it probably needed. Definitely needs some moneymaker kind of songs and that sort of aspect, but you did at least get one or two maybe, but it just doesn't have that overabundant. A lot of these just kind of have a more kind of concentrated and just more adamant and kind of like this stern kind of hustle as far as that goes. I mean, it's kind of stern, but it's also kind of relaxed about it. It's kind of a determined, I guess that's the better word, determined kind of aspect as far as the money getting, this kind of thing. But I definitely like Sun Come Up, definitely like Pop That Pussy. I mean, there's a lot of songs I like on here, but in terms of the recreational ones, there are some differential vibes for it. So then the last song to recommend is Why. The last song to recommend on here is Why. This is a very soulful kind of tune. This is a cityscaping, kind of sprawling, soulful, kind of hustle tune. Definite out and about type song, and it's just got some good sightseeing. It's got some good sightseeing fanfare about it. This is kind of like a more album-sized version of like the typical mixtape soulfulness that you get from like Lil Wayne and Birdman and folks like that, Jeezy, some of those type folks. This is kind of something that I could see Cameron kind of doing in like the mid 2000s. This kind of has that soulful kind of going through the city buildings, flashy building lights, that type of stuff. Just appreciating like the Thursday, Friday nights of just going to restaurants and places to buy clothes and stunting and that type of stuff. Not quite a club song, not quite necessarily like a VIP bottle popping kind of song, but I definitely see it as just like a good cityscaping tune, just like a good cityscaping tune to just appreciate the sights as far as that kind of goes. Good song for Miami. Talk about some of these songs I didn't enjoy. Like Homie and Hose was just kind of an interlude of Rick Ross talking to some chick on the song, and then like Flashy Cars, Movie Stars was kind of trying to be like a hustle song. Flashy Cars Movie Stars gave me vibes similar to This Me off of Rick Ross's Trilla album. It's just kind of like a worse beat or a worse rendition of that type tune. It just has like the same kind of hustle, kind of almost promo type tune bravado about it, but this was not very enthralling as far as like the concept of trying to be like a stepping out kind of tune. One of the weaker beats on here kind of felt like an undercooked kind of cut as far as that kind of went. This was one. It took 2.5 minutes for this song to start up too, so that was another kind of awkward thing about it, but just didn't appreciate that one as much. And then Justice was an example of another soulful song that was trying to be like a mixtape type cut, and it had Gutta Gutta on here, who kind of does some of that stuff similar to Lil Wayne. Gutta Gutta is a Lil Wayne mixtape buddy in that sort of sense. He does a lot of those type songs, but just didn't see the concept of that one. It just did not compare to like some of the better soulful songs like Betty Stout and like Why. I felt like Why and Betty Stout were just better variations of some of that mixtape type hustle. But it just kind of feels like this project kind of had like a lack of just like I mean, this mixtape's going to get a high score, of course, but just the concept of me noticing that some of the song topics on here, I would have liked a few more songs to just see some of the more palettes that they would have had to offer, because you get like these money songs, you get these soulful songs, and a couple R&R type songs as far as that kind of goes, but it just doesn't have like an overall palette of other topics as far as that kind of goes. You get a couple songs for ladies also, but there's not really smoking songs. There's not really like stunting flashy. I mean, Flashy Cars Movie Stars just doesn't do like the stunting and flossing type tune very much justice. So I just kind of question if there could have been a bigger song palette, because I know Birdman has the capability of doing song palettes. He did that on Five Star Stunna, and Rick Ross's Trilla was pretty versatile also. So it just did not have like the sheer versatility that it needed to. But it's not to say like I'm talking like I'm gonna give this mixtape like a 4 or a 6 or a 7 out of 10. It's gonna get a 10. I mean, that's the thing. It gets a 10 out of 10. Be like an 8 out of 10 songs, just not liking the interlude and then 2 songs out of 10. It's just the fact that it's just a short and compact kind of project. I should have pumped out at least another 2 or 3 more songs on here just to appreciate it a little bit better. I would have wondered, just because this is a good sweet spot. That's the thing about this project, is it's a sweet spot for Rick Ross and it's a sweet spot for Birdman. They're both in their prime around this time, so definitely only getting like 8 songs by them when there should have been like a few more is definitely kind of somewhat a disappointment. Not enough to hinder the score, but it's just kind of like, damn, we could have used the kind of a scene. I think it would have been a good scaping thing to have seen some other songs just from those sessions to wonder what the album could have been like in terms of like the sheer quality. I mean, for what it is, I appreciate these times. There are some good songs as far as that goes, but there's just not enough like songs like Pop That Pussy and Sun Come Up for more recreational kind of vibes. This is very much kind of a more stark and determined kind of album that when you realize that you only get about 1 or 2 type songs of each style that you like, this doesn't have the sheer variety of what it needs to offer. Just needed more songs. That's the main complaint. Probably could have used, this project should have been like 14, 15, or even 16 songs deep, and you could have had more to dissect and prove that this could have been a higher hit quality. That is kind of the thing. So 10 out of 10, but as a result, the social score kind of gets like an 8.5 out of 10, just because I did like the first single, Sun Come Up, and I do like songs like Pop That Pussy, some of the mixtape fare like Betty Stout, and I did like the stunting and flexing kind of vibes of Addicted and some of that type of stuff. But There's just the social score I'm going to give an 8.5 out of 10 because this did have some quality on here, and I do like songs like "Sun Come Up" and "Pop That Pussy," but I definitely could have used more recreational kind of tunes because there is a lot of stuff on here. But I just feel like the overall kind of album mantra just didn't quite sift through enough just because the album didn't come out. So you don't really get the true scape of what was going to happen with the songs that they wanted to do. I mean, you get the songs on here, but you don't necessarily know what the second single was going to be and what songs that they wanted for the album. These are just studio session kind of songs that are just less of like the sheer album that was supposed to come out and just more just like, oh, this is stuff that they recorded for it. So it's not, I don't know if it actually has the sheer kind of album cadence of execution that would go on like an actual album that came out or something. These are just songs that they made for it. So I don't know. They just said that they were the lost sessions. That's kind of the concept about it. So I just wonder how this album would have been crafted because I definitely like songs like "Sun Come Up" and "Pop That Pussy." "Addicted's" pretty good in some of those, but it needed kind of, I mean, there's a lot of hustle and kind of mixtape kind of soulful kind of fanfare on here, but I do think it could have used like another weekend cut and another song that could have sold the album, sold some units, that type of stuff. Just some good club flashiness that probably could have needed. That's just kind of the thing. So for what it is, I do recommend it enough. I mean, like I said, I gave it a 10 out of 10, so it is a quality project, but it's just it. I mean, it may, I don't know if it'll trigger you just the fact that this album didn't come out. It was supposed to. It was supposed to come out in 2008. It was just kind of the concept of it's just kind of a mythic kind of album just because you don't get the sheer capacity of like what was, how the album would have done with like the polish of like the labels had it happen. So it's just kind of the thing. But in terms of the future, like Birdman's been kind of quiet. He did drop a collaborative mixtape with NBA YoungBoy like in 2021 or something like that, late 2021. And Rick Ross dropped an album in late 2021. He's been kind of quiet lately too, but there is some stuff. I am gonna get to some more stuff by both these folks. So we'll get to some of that. So this is kind of the thing.